Maybe I was on mute. That's what I didn't know, huh? So, thank you so much for being here this week. We have had just a fabulous week, and I heard so many great things about the visits on Capitol Hill yesterday. And we're going to continue our theme this morning, as I'm sure you'll find out in just a couple of minutes. But it's so important that you were back in town this particular moment. We have a new administration, lots of new things going on, and our work continues. So it's important that we stay engaged in that work. And we know that public policy never ends, and if we want a brighter future, we have to be part of that conversation. So thank you all for being here. You're going to, I think, have a special treat this morning. It is obviously a program that is tied to a big theme for us, the Pell Grant program that we've been celebrating so much this week. So I think you're going to find it to really resonate with our belief in the human spirit. And to introduce our speaker this morning, there is no better or more inspirational partner than my fellow Washington Higher Ed Secretariat colleague, Father Dennis Holzschneider, who's the president of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. I have so enjoyed working with Father Dennis. We both started at the same time. We're in the same class, I think, so to speak. And it's been just a pleasure to work on pandemic relief, be fighting together for equitable treatment of our sector, and he always has he's always able to bring a little bit of humor to the work that we do together, and for that I am very grateful. Father Dennis?
Thanks, Barbara. Good morning. Oh, that was kind of like church. It's wonderful to be with you today. You just heard my name is Dennis Holzschneider. I have the pleasure of leading the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities and serving on NAICU's Secretariat and Board. And I want to thank Barbara and NAICU for offering me this opportunity, because it really is an honor and a pleasure. It's a special pleasure to introduce Reverend David Tyson to all of you. In our Catholic world, Father David is known as one of the good guys. He's a domer, to be sure. Undergraduate and master's degrees from the University of Notre Dame, a doctorate from Indiana. He returned as faculty to the Department of Management, and then he went on to be Father Hesburgh's executive assistant. Not bad training, that. And then VP for Student Affairs. In 1990, he became president of the University of Portland, growing the university and raising its profile in all the ways that matter. 13 years later, in 2003, he was elected the provincial superior of his religious congregation, serving, I think that's the maximum, 9 years, and merging it with other provinces with congregation until it said he has 500 priests serving on 3 continents. From there, he went back to Notre Dame on its nonprofit management faculty for a time, only to be elected president of Holy Cross College in Indiana, where he remains today. Father Tyson has too many awards to mention here, but permit me one. He holds the highest civilian award, the Outstanding Civilian Service Medal from the Department of the Army, in providing guidance and support for military education in the context of a university. But today, he's here to speak about education for a very different population, very much in need of our work. And so I'm happy to introduce you this morning to Father David Tyson.
As one gets older, these introductions start to sound like a wake. My God. last week. I am nearing I agreed to a 5-year term at Holy Cross, and this is the 5th year, and so I'll be moving on. And recently, a group of senior students came to see me and said, "Well, why are you going?" And I said, "Well, I said, Brother John Driscoll, our founder, died at his desk at age 56, and he was a hero." And I said, "David Tyson, if he dies at his desk at 74, he's a fool." So they thanked me very much and left my office. I would like to join others in welcoming you here to this, we hope, interesting presentation about a program that we have at Holy Cross College that is in tandem with a collaboration with the University of Notre Dame in a formal way, and also St. Mary's College participates in it at a programmatic level. What we want to do here today is not try to give you the definition for restorative justice, because most of you know as well as I do that it's a kind of sliding definition depending on where you are, and it's really hot right now. I saw it on the television last night on 2 stories on the news. So we won't try to give an exhaustive definition of what it is. We have I'll say a little bit about it, but we have someone here who has also experienced it in his life. What I would like to do is just give you a little bit of a quick overview of what the program that we call the Moreau College Initiative is at Holy Cross College. And before I do that, I would just like to take a second to introduce you to Dr. Michael Griffin, who is the Senior Vice President and Interim Provost at Holy Cross College. He is a theologian and an ethicist, and he will be talking a bit about some of his research that he has in a book that he did, and he'll be talking a little bit about the relationship between mercy and forgiveness. Also, our final speaker will be what I call the man of the hour, and so I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Miles Folsom. Miles will be graduating from Holy Cross College on our main campus in South Bend in May. He comes to us from the experience firsthand of the Moreau College initiative. When Miles was 15 years old, he was arrested for assault, and he was tried and sentenced to 36 years in a maximum security prison as a 15-year-old fellow. After 12 years, and I will let him give you the detail, but after 12 years, he moved to the prison in Westville, Indiana, northwest Indiana, and at a time that was somewhat fortuitous, because the program at Westville started in 2012. You have this flyer, which gives you all of the details, and it has grown steadily. I do want to mention here a person by the name of Dr. Alicia Sarasinski, who is the hero as president of the college. I sleep well at night about this. So, let me begin. Just briefly, any of you who have done any kind of work in corrections know that it's a tricky world. And Tina, certainly, Tina, who's here this evening, was at Holy Cross, knows this. It wasn't always a smooth relationship between the Department of Correction, Holy Cross College, and Notre Dame. And so we award the degree programmatically, and as far as faculty is concerned, Notre Dame faculty. And I would have to say this, a lot of these folks are retired senior faculty members from Notre Dame that were at the top of the game. So, I mean, they are incredible professors at the prison. There's certainly Holy Cross College. We tend to have a younger faculty right now. But it took a while for there to be a trust relationship between the Department of Corrections and the institutions. And like anything else, it's about relationships, right? So when there was a change of an assistant warden and then a change of a warden, things started to look differently. And now when we go there for commencement, it's like it's like the family's gathering. Nobody knows who is except my outfit, and the graduates. So it's been just in my 5 years as president something that I didn't count on that would be one of those kind of life changers. And also, it has allowed us, I believe, as an institution to mature. To be totally frank with you, it's hard for higher education sometimes, and we're part of the Bard University Consortium, and Bard has been a leader in this. But it's hard for higher education to wrap their arms around something that we are trained in our society and culture to not talk about restorative justice, but it's based on retribution. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So when I became president, I knew that there were members of my board that really didn't want me to talk about this except in low tones with the door closed over a cocktail. We're all for it, Father, but. So as Dr. Griffin knows, before I leave in May, we're going to be shouting this from the housetops because I think it is a real contribution we make to society, also to the church. We're proud to say that we have 59 MCI alumni. And when I'm there at commencement in May, I hold up the commencement booklet and show them their classmates, and they were just presented to them at our commencement in South Bend. And so Miles will be present to receive his baccalaureate degree. He received his AA degree a couple of years ago. So what I would just like, and let me tell you about what has evolved. We actually have a little college within the prison. We were given a cell block, and that cell block houses the students. It houses their classrooms. It houses their materials, and it has a sign on it that says the Moreau College Initiative. What's cool about this for me is Basil Moreau is the founder of the Congregation of Holy Cross. I think he'd be really happy. He'd be probably shocked, but really happy that we are doing this. So Miles, he's not there anymore, but Miles lived with his classmates. They did have mobility there. And so I would say to you, this is more than just the delivery of a curriculum, credit hours. This was a formation experience for these men, and for some of them a first, and for some a reentry. But again, I will let him explain those experiences himself. But first, I'd like to ask Dr. Mike Griffin if he would come up and share with us his thoughts on the whole possible relationship, instead of retribution, but one of how mercy and justice can meet.
Thanks, Father. And as we move towards, as we say, the man of the hour, this can just give a little bit of an intellectual framework for what we're doing in higher education. And as Father said, this space of college and prison is becoming more attractive to many institutions, perhaps some of yours. And, as Father and I were talking about this concept of restorative justice, it did parallel concepts that come from the Catholic intellectual tradition, concepts that, for example, would posit that mercy may not be in a kind of separation from justice, but could complete justice. And there's a great psalm where we speak of justice and mercy embracing. And so one of the things I wanted to do today is share a little bit of where this concept of restorative justice in action through our Moreau College Initiative really stands. At the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities Conference, Father Dennis very wisely ended that with a session with one of the great intellectuals of our tradition, Father Jim Heft. And what he said is one of the things that we have to do is take concepts like justice, which you hear by all parties now, speaking about justice, social justice. And we have to take it and bring the depth of our tradition into the current age. And so traditionally, we've had a concept of justice that's a little bit static, even in the medieval, the Catholic tradition of justice as rights and dues. Everyone gets what they're due. But now there's a movement to speak of justice as right relationship right relationship between members of society towards the vulnerable, our responsibilities towards the earth itself. And this sense of comprehensive right relationship presents a challenge. What does this mean towards those people who are incarcerated? And in my book, The Politics of Penance, which takes a very old-time concept, bless me, Father, for I have sinned, the confessional, and says, what does this speak to our political moment? I discovered that at times in the past, we had a more comprehensive right relationship where penitentiaries really went back to that root. Think about that word, penitentiaries, the place where penitents are, places where they are going to do penance, not in some easy sense, but in a sense that's leading towards restoration. And so in that sense, we see that concepts like penance, concepts like mercy, may have something to say. And so when we as a Catholic higher education institution, and Bard as a secular higher education institution, and Washington University, and Duke University, and Seattle University began to move into this space, and plenty of others, we started to say, okay, this can help us for society to say, what does justice look like? What is the relationship between a very tough criminal justice system that seems to be based on retribution and what we as academics want to say, hey, here's another way to think about justice. But what we found out, and to bring us a little closer to our man of the hour, is you can't just talk about it. You can't just talk about it. And so the Moreau College Initiative, as I like to think it's part of this classic Holy Cross College spirit, a spirit which many of your institutions have too, we said, let's put it into action. And so before Miles shares a little of his story, I think, Sarah, we may have queued up. Do we have the short video? Yes. Here is the Moreau College Initiative in action, followed by a living icon of it who is showing the world what is at the heart of it.
When I became incarcerated, things were very bleak and very dismal, and I really didn't know what I was going to do.
We all know that there's a problem in the country with incarcerated individuals who have their lives stalled, have difficulty finding employment afterwards, falling back into patterns of criminal activity. But what we hoped was that we would give the students an opportunity to find a different path.
His son should have been a king, so Leontes takes on that role and heals Cecilia. Yes.
I decided to start teaching at Westville right when the program started. Everything about the space and their experience of that space is tightly controlled. And so to be willing to enter into not only the idea of themselves as college students, but to participate in the transformation of that correctional space into a university space requires a lot on their part. And I've been amazed at how capable they are at entering into the ways of thinking and the ways of being that accompany a liberal arts education.
This is a transformative process, being around such a thirst for knowledge. And I have never been in an environment like this before.
We're in the business of trying to transform the world, one life at a time, one dream at a time. No one is expendable. Everyone is intricately tied to each other in a kind of web of life.
The professors here are great. They do not slack and teach us differently than they do on campus. So they expect that type of quality of work from us as they do on campus. They have this energy about them that really intensifies when they talk about what they love, and it's a passion that they have, and we see that.
You know, I think oftentimes people think of teaching as a one-directional kind of exchange of information, when in actual fact, if the relationship is a good and productive one, you learn more than you teach.
If anything, sometimes we have to up our game a bit to keep up with them because they're working so hard. They're exciting students who are doing the kind of work that makes us excited, and that they then have the ability to go out and translate those talents in the outside world. It's deeply gratifying to see someone go on, get his degree, move beyond the prison, and now be employed.
It just opened up a lot of doors that I never saw myself being able to walk through. Not only were they good to me while I was in there, but they followed up with me since I've been home, and they try to provide me with opportunities that are gonna either spread the word and help others, or that are gonna put me in a better position as I continue down my path. My dream is at this point to become an addictions counselor and to influence positively as many lives as I can. Everything that I've experienced kind of feels like God's calling me to do this, like you've been through it, and I've got 6 years sobriety now, so I've got that time under my belt, and I can show people that it can be done. I couldn't say thank you enough. I could say it for the rest of my life and it wouldn't be enough.
My hopes and dreams for these students are remarkably similar to my hopes and dreams for the students that I teach at Notre Dame. And that's that they get the kind of deep and rigorous liberal arts education that we offer, and that they are able to use that knowledge, that way of thinking, and that way of being to understand themselves and the world in a meaningful way.
The cross was the most insidious form of execution that there was at the time, and what Jesus did was to give us hope forever, because he turned that into an instrument of salvation and of love. And they know the cross. Those guys know the cross. There is no doubt about that. And if what we do there is the part that turns that cross for them into an instrument of hope, then that would be a wonderful thing for us in this program.
It changed my life. I have hope. So when I get my diploma and I walk across that stage, the first thing that I'm going to yell is, if I can do this, you can do this. There is hope. When you put the time into something, if you put a lot of time into it, you can mold that to be something very special. And that diploma, I don't want to cry. That diploma is going to be not the end of my education here, but the catalyst for much bigger things in the future. And I don't know what they are, but I know that I can tackle them.
So it's my pleasure to present to you Miles Folsom, AA, Holy Cross College, and soon to be BA. Miles.
Hello. Thank you all for coming out and listening. I stand before you today the proud recipient of faith, mercy, and a Pell Grant. And more specifically, a second chance Pell Grant that was given to me by the Moreau College Initiative during a term of lengthy incarceration that I served from the age of 15 to 28 years old. Faith, mercy, and Pell came together within that program to give me a new lease on life. And although I stand here this morning about to tell you my story, I think it's important that you recognize I stand for a class of individuals, some 2.3 million strong, who are fighting with themselves day and night to reform within the Department of Corrections all across this nation. I speak for a class of nearly voiceless individuals who have not come nearly as far as me and are not capable of articulating their feelings, their thoughts, dreams, and hopes as I am. They are prisoners to the cyclical nature of trauma. And I know this cycle very well. I have been both victim to it and perpetrator of it. I am a human who has suffered every major form of trauma known to us. The anguish that I have endured in my life is something that is still incomprehensible to me, having come out of it. My childhood was filled with trauma and the concomitant misconduct that accompanies it. My first encounter with police came at the age of 6 years old for a curfew violation. My first incarceration came at the age of 9 years old. And it was not simple assault that I was arrested for at 15. It was assault with a deadly weapon after I had robbed a drug dealer and beat him. This is how far gone that I was, even at that age. I say this only to break the stereotype that you may have seeing me stand here in a suit in Washington, D.C. My judge, probably the most prominent female judge in the state of Indiana, the longest standing, said that I was the worst juvenile offender she had ever seen in her some 30 years on the bench. And let me tell you, this is a woman's opinion who is highly revered and respected, and I believe it. And it was her condemnation and her 30 years experience that then sent me to 30 years, roughly, in the Indiana Department of Corrections. Never, in any respect, have I decried injustice at that sentence. I am a hard-on crime advocate. But for me, to be hard on somebody is not retribution. The hardest thing that I have ever done in my life was to educate, was to change it. It was easy getting high. It was easy getting in fights. It was easy going back to my cell and watching TV for 23 hours. It wasn't hard at all. I was just locked in a cell and warehoused. No difficulty in that. The hardest thing that I ever did was change my life. And the only injustice that I ever decried of my incarceration was the lack of availability of such a college program. You see, I spent the first 8 years of my incarceration within a maximum security prison where there was no college, very little programming, and I was there for no other reason than that I had a long sentence, and it was required by policy for me to remain there among the worst offenders within the state of Indiana. Luckily, after 8 years, I was allowed to transfer to a lower level security prison. And it was in that prison that I found the hope of the Moreau College Initiative and the college education that it offered. Now, it did not just hand this program out to anyone. There was an admissions process. There was an essay contest. You had to go, sit down, pick from one of 3 prompts, and write an impromptu essay. And then they narrowed it down to an interview process. And you had to go before 2 of the steering committee members and undergo probably a 30-minute conversation. And then from there, if you were accepted, you got into the program. You were moved into this dorm that was specially outfitted for members of that community. I learned a lot in the Moreau College Initiative. I had decided to educate myself and change my life from the moment that I entered the penitentiary. But by and large, I did that alone. And I did that simply by reading books. I had nothing else but a library and time in my cell. And so although that was certainly beneficial, there was not the same type of rigor, expectation, and testing that you'll find, obviously, in a college environment. So getting to the MCI program provided a whole new system of structure for the information and ideas that I had sort of pulled from the world's literature and spun around my head in a desperate attempt to come back to life. I came to recognize through education what humanity meant to me as a person. But it was a theoretical thing. I understood it, I read it, the great authors, they talked about it. But what did it mean in practice? Because it's very hard to be humane in prison. Many would think that it's a weakness, and that if you were to show that weakness, to offer kindness to someone in trouble, that you are also weak, and you could then become the prey. So it was very hard to get that practical application of what it meant, how to really feel within a humane connection with another individual. However, when I got to the Moreau College Initiative, that all changed. I walked into a family of individuals who I would say were certainly enlightened. And as you've heard today, these professors are not just sort of your random professors who say, hey, I need a job. These are tenured, seasoned professors, some of them who have retired, the top of their class. And they have turned around and decided, hey, you know what? I want something a little more in life. So, I'm going to go to this prison experience, and I'm going to try to help these young men. And in doing so, they create a community. They create the experience of what it means to be wrapped up in humanity, to feel the mercy and forgiveness of this person who's teaching you just out of the goodness of their heart. To feel that, to be in connection and communication with it, is transformative. I say that again, it is transformative. And that's something that many of us may take for granted because we don't come necessarily from the ghetto. We don't come from poverty. We may not come from the worst sort of trauma. But in prison, that is exactly where they come from. And they do not know that feeling. They do not know that kindness given out unconditionally every day. Many don't even know what it's like to be taught with care. They come from public schools that are overburdened. Never had maybe a one-on-one interaction with somebody in an educational sense. But this is what we can give them within a college and prison program. This is the transformation that we can cause within these lost individuals. And now, understand, I'm a pragmatist, and I understand that many people in our society do not think those who commit crimes are deserving of a second chance. And I'm sympathetic to the opinion, no doubt about it. But the reality is 96% of all prisoners, all 2.3 million of them, will return back to our society. Undoubtedly, they're coming. What are they going to be like when they get back to us? The 3-year recidivism rate nationally, roughly 30%. 30% are going to return in 3 years. In 5 years, it more than doubles to a 70% recidivism rate. 70% of people released from prison will return within 5 years. Now, why? Why does that matter? If you cannot connect to the person who is within that plight, simply look around you. Those people are not going back to prison just because they asked to. Those people are creating more victims every year. They get out of prison, and to recidivate, it is necessary that they create a victim. And this is the cycle. They go in, they come out. They go in, they come out. Meanwhile, we suffer greatly for it. And we suffer greatly for it because we are so stuck in this idea of retribution that we cannot think to treat them better, if not for anyone else than but ourselves. Because to heal that person is to prevent a new victim. And so as I said, I am a hard-on-crime advocate. I wish to put that person through the hardest thing they have ever done in their life, which is to educate and change. And in many cases, I don't necessarily do it for the prisoner. I do it for us. I do it for all those people who could become victims. I do it for the children of the families who are affected by this criminality. The Barred Prison Initiative released a statistic of all the graduates within the consortium. And if a prisoner but only participates in a college in prison program, not even graduates, participates, the recidivism rate of that individual drops to 4%. 4%. We live in a society now that sees recidivism between 30 and 70%. Can you imagine what our nation, let alone our world, would look like if we could drop recidivism across the board to even 8%, even 10%? Could you imagine how the fabric of our culture, the fabric of our nation, democracy, and the world would change if we could really get underneath this cancer that is criminality, get underneath this cyclical nature of trauma and eradicate it down to 10%. It would be a fundamental change in our nation, in our people, and in our lives. Mercy, to me, is no more clearly seen in those numbers. To take it from 30 to 70 down to 4. That is what mercy in this context does for a person. That is the healing effect, the transformative effect that it has on people caught in the plight of criminality. It would be a waste for me not to take this chance to call on you. To call on you to expand what may be your already college and prison program, or to create one, to do something similar to what we've done here. If not for the prisoner, for the rest of us who will ultimately receive the reverberations of that trauma in our own lives. Do it out of mercy for the sake of humanity. If we do not cure criminality, it continues on as a cancer within our populace, tearing us apart from the inside out. I call on you to help us further this cause, to restore not just the individual, not just the victim, but to help us restore society, to reweave that fabric back together so that going forward, the legacy is something that our children and our grandchildren and our progeny 100, 200, 300 years from now will look back on with awe and say, wow, they really cured it. Thank you.
Boy, I think this is the first time we've ever ended on time for have questions. Thanks. not because of me. We would be willing to hear any questions or comments you would like to make. I would like to say too that Miles, in this short period of time since December 21st, that his first taste of real freedom, has founded with a colleague a nonprofit foundation. An organization that has to do with juvenile offenders, and he is designing a what kind of prison?
A reentry prison.
A reentry prison. And so he's very, very active right now, as well as going to school. So let's open this up, if we could, to any questions or comments that you would like to make. We have a few minutes, right?
Thank you for this presentation today, and congratulations to you on your success. Father, I do have a question about retention rates for the program and acceptance rates as well into the program.
Thanks. Yeah, just to give a couple of the statistics, the selectivity has become very high. In other words, it is not easy to get into the program. So about 25% of those who interview, or who write the essay, get chosen. And the retention rate is about 75%, which is really good. They do a very good job of screening. It's not, they're looking for real academic promise. So it's pretty selective, and the retention is good.
And my observation also as president in the times that I have been there, because I certainly hear your concern as a legitimate one. I think part of the nature of the program that has developed over time is with a different kind of population, it sort of does mimic what we try to do on the main campus. And we believe in the word formation. And there are a different set of circumstances, a different set of hopes, and that is operative, especially since they live together, though they're incarcerated. And the kind of, I would say, even though it's on a weekly basis rather than every single day, the kind of pedagogy of presence that the MCI faculty has among them. They know, as you heard in the video, and these are not people that have any other agenda for them, and that's kind of new in their life. So it's sort of a freedom within this incarceration. But I think it's a good question because you could have a program that doesn't occur. So I think that the admissions process, the rigor, and Miles can tell you too, it's strict. So you can be dismissed from the program easily. So it has worked for us. 70% isn't bad. What else do you want to say?
Yeah, sure. It's very rigorous, no doubt about it. Not just the essay process, but the expectations and the standards that these professors have on you. The majority of the professors that I had the pleasure of being educated by were, as I said, seasoned Notre Dame professors. And they came with the Notre Dame curriculum and grading scale. And they said, this is the standard that I will hold you to. This is the exact standard that I hold my students on the main campus to. I'm not coming in here to baby you. I'm not going to give you an easy A. I may not even give out an A this semester, because an A is exceptional. That is the standard that they hold us all to. Some people struggle through it, some people excel, but they do not change it. And I think that is very, very important. There have been college in program prisons long before the BARD consortium. Programs that you may recall were corrupt. People cheated, they bought papers, anyone was allowed into it. This is not that. The Moreau College Initiative and the BARD Consortium is putting forth a completely new model of college in prison education with different expectations, different rigors, different standards, and a selection process so that not everybody should just get in. The thing about, if anybody gets in and has no value, the selection process and the rigors that it takes to get into it are what instill the value in the program from the eyes of the prisoners. It ensures that whoever is there wants to be there and is working hard to remain there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question. I'm Ann McElhaney Johnson from Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles. And I'm also chair of the Women's College Coalition. And I'm wondering, first of all, Miles, I want to thank you for sharing not only your story, but you are a gifted writer and speaker, and it was deeply moving and a privilege to hear you, so thank you for that. I'm wondering if this program, the consortium, is working also with female inmates, and as we think about how to reach an expanded population.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there is conversations going on now. The Department of Corrections, for some reason, is very interested in Holy Cross College and the University of Notre Dame. I think the language is taking over the state in terms of our prisons and this kind of program. Interestingly enough, there is I can tell this program, MCI, will be the flagship. There's no doubt about it. We have delivered a similar program, not exactly the same because we didn't have the horses to do it, at the women's prison at downstate, and that is also on the docket because when we left that, there is nothing there. So I think but to have the correctional and the governor and everyone looking at this, its chance of taking place, and also, to be honest, Dave Wance's crowd at ICI, I think it has a chance to really be revolutionary in the state of Indiana, that's for sure.
Well, hi, I'm Jody Furries. I am from Dave Wance's crowd at ICI, so we're the proud agency that covers you. So Miles, thanks. We could not be more proud of you. I would like for you to talk about how you went in at 15, right? And I don't know this, but I'm guessing that you didn't have based on all the things that were stacked against you, you didn't have a great educational pedigree up to that time, right? So how do you what's the preparation for the folks who would then be applying, right? Because I see you have this rigorous application process, you have rigor once you get into the program, but how do you get someone who goes in at 15 years old to be prepared? You are a unicorn, right? You're unique, and you could read a book and then use words like concomitant properly, right? But that's not everyone. So what's the preparation between going in and hitting the application?
That's a great question. I certainly stand alone in my progress, which is one of the reasons why I wish to highlight my criminal history, to try and break that stereotype so that you could try to see through this suit to the person that I once was. But even when I arrived at the Moreau College Initiative, still, I stood out. I had been educating myself for 8 years. Many men had just been to prison in the last year. They had never gone through that rigorous education. Maybe they had a GED. They struggled. I remember one gentleman in particular. I was amazed that he got through the application process because as a writing tutor, when he asked me to sit down with him and assist him on one of his first English composition papers, silently I was astounded at the illiteracy that this man possessed. I could not believe that he had made it through the essay process. And it was then that I realized that the rigor of the essay has nothing to do with literacy necessarily. They're looking to see how you think. They want to know, do you have that spark? Do you have that search, the seed of curiosity within you? And many times, even if it's broken English, you can see when a person is thinking differently. That gets you in the door. And then once in the door, what gets you on your way to literacy and a college education is the community. I and a team of us were trained by the Notre Dame Writing Center to be writing tutors to the gentlemen who were struggling with their papers. We were trained as math tutors to help them. We live on our own dorm that is a community of people all working towards the same end. And so when somebody struggled but did not give up, we all surrounded them in ensuring that they made it through. It was more than just an education. I mean, it was a community experience. And it was a community that was engendered by the college, by the professors. And so I would say, through the community and the support that we all had for one another, that was the only way that some of these gentlemen came up through literacy to become college graduates.
Good morning. I'm Mary Hinton, president of Hollins University, a member of the Women's College Coalition. And again, I want to echo what everyone else has said, Miles. I think you inspired all of us on this day, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
My question is, I'm pretty sure all of us now want to go out and start a program in a prison. And before we do, my question is, how important is that cohort residential model? Because I think that's a really distinguishing factor compared to other older programs. Could you help us think about the role of that residential piece, both in terms of your experience, Miles, but also, Father David, when you were building this program, what piece or what role that played in it?
The residential living unit is paramount to the success of the program, undoubtedly. If you're going to start a program in a prison and they don't want to give you your own space, don't do it. Hold out. Because prisons today all across this nation are cesspits. They are terrible. They are ghettos behind fences that you do not see. And to live in one is a terrible experience. To be warehoused in terror, because every day all around you is nothing but gang violence and drug use. You wake up and you smell the dope smoke in the air. And it is such an epidemic that the guards do not act as if they were police officers on the street. It is happening so often in so many areas of the prison that they would just be chasing smoke, is what you call it. So having your own place where all these like-minded individuals can live together in the protection of their progress is paramount, undoubtedly. And do not do it without that.
The moderator is telling me to look at my watch, so I'm doing that. If I could I'll just respond very quickly. One of the things that my religious community, probably more by accident than anything in the 19th century, we live with our students, and we still do that. I live in a residence hall at Holy Cross College with students. We probably have 30 Holy Cross priests who live in the residence halls at the University of Notre Dame. A lot of that comes from that early charism, because I used the word formation before. And that's usually something you attach to religious formation, or somebody's in a novitiate or something. And we actively do that. We have a formation day during orientation with our new students. And it's not just a religious experience or preparing for liturgical things, et cetera. It's a lot of what Miles experienced. What happened at MCI was basically because I believe that the relationships fell into place. Credibility is huge. In collaboration with a research university, credibility is important. Credibility is important with a correctional institution, whether or not we think they're jerks. That's beside the point. And now, I'll close with this. You did see the graduation shot in the video. It's amazing to be at the graduation. Families are invited, etc. Lots of emotion, but lots and lots of excitement. And I mentioned this to Miles. There's valedictorians, both the AA and the BA, and they both give addresses. And the valedictorian for the AA degree, his mother was sitting right there in a wheelchair, and at the very end, he apologized. So that, was restorative justice. But there was a big cheer. It's a different population. So I would like to close by simply saying what I've learned from this, because I am a brutal pragmatist also. And I even said, we're asked to do this thing, and I'm thinking, restorative justice, are you crazy? Half the people that give the victims thing, if they had a gun in their hand, they'd be shooting in the courtroom. So I said, this is going to be interesting. But I've come to this sort of conclusion, is it might just be that the key to restorative justice is it's that place, as he's pointed out, it's that place where mercy and justice can meet. So we'll leave that with you. Thank you for coming, and we'll hang around for a bit if people want to continue the conversation. But thanks so much for having us. Shall we?